So, very happy to have good friends here on stage presenting some super interesting corporates out there that are building a variety of corporate innovation vehicles. And it's really, really interesting to look at the data. So I'm going to start with some data, and thank you for Hagar from Kלכליסט for collecting some of this data and trying to look at it online the past few days. So if you look at the US for 2018, so out of $135 billion invested by VCs, about $71 billion were invested by corporate venture funds, right? So 52% of the money was invested by corporate venture funds. If you look at Israel, so out of 7.5 billion in 2018 invested in by VCs, 3.3 billion was invested by corporate venture funds. So it's 43%. By the way, I wonder where Europe is in this. I think lagging significantly, where in the way corporates participate in this game. I'll let you talk about it in a second. So maybe before we continue, would love to get, first of all, tell us who you are, the way your company deals with open innovation through, Nimrod talked about accelerators, so accelerators, corporate venture funds, M&A, and other vehicles. So Julie, you want to start?
Sure. Hi, everyone. So my name is Julie. I'm an investor at Salesforce Ventures. Salesforce Ventures is basically the strategic investment arm of Salesforce, as the name suggests. We do investments in B2B SaaS companies, anywhere from Series A to pre-IPO. We've been doing this for 10 years now, so it originally came out of, M&A activity, making investments here and there, but then really turned into a, self-sustaining vehicle by this point. We've made over 300 investments to date. Companies like Dropbox, DocuSign, Twilio in Israel, Bring, Taxi, Click Software is really well known. Really, the market has been going really well for us there as well. And how we think about it is really trying to be as investor and financially driven as possible, while leveraging also everything that our corporate we can benefit from. That is access to our ecosystem, access to our client base, access to all the knowledge we have internally, and thereby helping our companies become financially really, really successful and hopefully driving return to the portfolio.
Cool, Phil.
Hi everybody, I'm Phil Watson. I hope you can hear me. This is definitely the noisiest conference I've ever been in. I'm sure there's a train that's going to pass just now. I run the innovation office for Citi Private Bank. So Citi, as you well know, is an extraordinarily large organisation. We have over 200,000 employees, many different businesses, many different clients. At the Private Bank, my responsibility is towards bringing in and incorporating new ways of thinking about how we can augment the client experience, maximize our efficiency, try to take down the risk in our business and deliver more insight to our customers. So that's our predominant focus. We operate a portfolio approach to the way that we work and engage with partners outside. It is a firm focus of ours to bring the outside in, as well as obviously bringing the inside out. And as a means to do that, we operate this portfolio approach. What does that mean? What that means is that we have a very large innovation network which comprises both technologists that work on the inside of Citi that actually aim to develop tools and capabilities, partnering sometimes with the outside, but developing them in such a way as to meet the individual needs of the business. We also have memberships to incubators so that we can actually get to understand the evolution in the ecosystem, some of the new companies that are operating, what people are talking about, and where there may be opportunities to partner. We operate the accelerator, actually Citi's first accelerator. Our largest innovation lab, I should say, is in Tel Aviv, and our first accelerator was in Tel Aviv. And it's something that we spend a lot of time working upon as another means of partnering with and broadening our ecosystem. And then finally, we have a lot of what I call in-house development, which is business development, business themselves, where they're identifying needs and then working externally with different companies to bring that in as well. So it's really a very phased approach, I would say.
Hi, Megumi Ikeda. I work at Hearst Ventures. Just quickly on Hearst, it's a conglomerate that is privately owned, top-line revenue of about $11.5 billion. We own everything from magazines to newspapers to the largest drug reaction database in the U.S. to automotive databases to ownership of Fitch Ratings, the debt ratings company. We've had the ventures team for about 25 years. It's a group that has been operating in the U.S., Tel Aviv, where Gil Kanani is. Some of you might know him. He's hard at home working on long-form documents, so hopefully we have news soon, and China, and then here in Europe. And our goal is, first and foremost, financial return. We have an obligation to the boards that we sit on for these private companies. And then, yeah, there's a broader strategic element here, which is basically learnings aggregated that we provide back to the company.
Cool, great, thank you. So I'll represent Intel here. I'm new to the company, but I tell you, ICAP has been around, Intel Capital has been around since '91. Invested $12.4 billion so far in more than 1,500 companies, 670 exits. 2018 alone, $391 million in 90 companies, and more than $100 million in Israel last year. So significant player there. Also, we just started an accelerator program, which I'm starting globally. So we have the whole value chain of super early stage. We have an M&A activity, of course. You all know about Mobileye as one of our major acquisitions in Israel lately, and of course ICAP and the accelerator program. I'm going to try and talk about this and about the confusion that many times people feel inside these corporate and outside about all these startup activities and do they make sense even. But I want to start with, I was going over for this panel, looked at what people say about corporate venture funds. And so people call corporate venture funds tourist investors. They come in, they go, they may not stay for long. Fred Wilson, and you all heard that quote, it happened a long time ago, said, never have a CVC in your syndicate. It's not a smart move. I think he asked forgiveness later about this statement, but...
We're an investor with...
Yes, but it was a statement he made, which means something, that there was a certain point, this is how people thought about corporate ventures. People call, again, online, people call venture investments as usually involved in dumb rounds or sucker rounds. There's a lot of bad rap for corporate venture. It used to be a lot of bad rap for corporate venturing. What do you think about that? Julie, you want to start?
Okay. So yeah, I think in terms of the bad raps, maybe starting with, the sucker rounds. Or what was your first quote around?
It was about tourist investors.
Tourist investors, right? So I think, at least from our perspective, rumors come from a certain, truth as well, a truth point. So there is a reason why, there's a conception in the market, or there was a conception like this in the market. I do think that CVC has professionalized a lot over the last years. There's a lot of venture funds that have been now around for 25 years, 10 years. So there's tapping in and out of the market isn't really a thing for those funds. So I think for an entrepreneur, really finding those that have been around for a while, have been building track record, have really, a portfolio to show, have some returns to show as well already. That's something just to be aware of, and then choose your CVC wisely. And I think on the CVC side, also same thing, being conscious of about that perception and structuring yourself in a way that you're not being perceived in that way, and operating against those, I think is equally important. And that's just aligning yourself with the founder's goals, and ultimately, in the best interest of the company is really important here, I think, to avoid that. Yeah.
Okay.
It's about alignment. As in any clearing process, it's about understanding what each party wants to achieve. Regulations have changed. How banks and different organizations approach venture capital has also changed over time. But I think as the model matures, and we now have many different company engagements across a wide range of spectrums. We have got to understand as a result of that, what obviously plays into their strengths and what plays into ours, and how we can create something that works together. And most importantly, there is some very identifiable success that's come out of that, in the sense that what the fintech set out to do has been achieved directly by working within the company.
Excuse me, Gumi, but we can all sit here and say, well, rubbish, it's all, there's some like this, but most of the corporate venture funds, Microsoft Ventures and ICAP and Hearst and Salesforce, awesome work, and things have changed. But let me be a bit challenging here. How many people, Megumi, are at Hearst Ventures for Europe and Israel?
Two.
How many people at?
Soon to be 4.
4. Phil, do you know how many people are in this region dealing with investments?
We have about 280.
Doing corporate investments?
280 working within the innovation lab, which provides our venture capital.
The CVC part, the corporate investment side.
I don't know the precise number, but it would be over 50.
Okay. So I think most of the cases I know are actually fairly small teams. How many people work at Pitango in Israel? I don't know, 50, 60, or Viola Ventures, similarly. Seriously? Can you do your work with 2 or 3 people?
Yeah.
And maybe it's a good opportunity for you guys to ask for more headcount. I don't know, but...
Yeah, I will get the video of this and send it to my...
So we'll make sure you get a copy. But seriously, you want to tell everyone here you're doing a proper due diligence and you're sitting on boards and you're adding value, but you're 2, 3 people.
Once you're on the board, I don't think it makes very many difference, right? So it's getting to that position. So I think most of us tend to work with other financial investors. We tend to be relatively focused in where we're looking for deals. So whereas Pitango has sort of broad brush stroke of everything, we are staying focused on certain areas. And those areas might change over time, but we're staying focused on certain areas. And then we are working with other financial investors.
Yeah, I think it's all about focus, to be honest. So we don't take a board seat for every single company that we invest in.
Sure.
But those where we feel we can actually help and add value. So that's number 1. Number 2 is we only co-invest. Our strategy is to partner up with someone that has a huge operations team behind them and can help on everything else that we wouldn't focus on, where we can focus really where we're good, which is go-to-market, access to our customers, and that's where we don't help, right? Instead of over-promising and under-delivering, we're saying quite clearly, this is where we are helpful, this is where you take our money. If that makes sense for you, we can work together.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Good. So I had a call yesterday with Phil, and I think he even, when we asked the question of how many people invest, and he said 200, because I think what was interesting for me in the conversation to hear that from Phil's perspective, at least, there was no confusion. There's an innovation work that's being done across multiple vehicles. There's the innovation team, there's the lab in Israel, there's the accelerator, there's the investment fund. I have to tell you that I get feedback a lot inside Intel now, before at Microsoft, and from the industry, that we corporates are really confusing everyone with all these vehicles to market. Startups want to approach us, and it's super hard to understand who's doing what, even internally. What's your take?
I mean, I should caveat that what I said yesterday was that we had a portfolio approach to how we go about integrating and bringing in the best of the outside, and I firmly believe that is the right approach, because it will not be through any one channel alone that you could source the best talent. So businesses need to identify the challenges that they face, and they need to work outside. They will be approached from people outside. We will need to work with incubators and some of the very largest incubators and mentor companies, maybe over a long period of time, in order to do that. We will need to invest in some companies. We will need to be silent, non-board members typically, but there are different forms of engagement. And so I think it's not that I was saying that it's confusing. I mean, I've worked at Citi for 20 years now, and it's an extremely large organization. And I guarantee that for anyone on the outside that finds it sometimes confusing, there's the train. That actually there will be, that can exist, some forms of confusion. But I also think that it comes back to the point about what are you seeking to achieve and working the network. And I think anyone that works the network effectively can find those parts of the businesses they ought to be talking to.
Confusion? Megumi, do you see any confusion?
We don't have a broad accelerator group. It's really the ventures team, the operating groups. There are a few people that do investment in seed stage funds for women, but that's very specific on the stage and the focus. So it's really ventures and the operating units.
Yeah, similar here. We have something called an accelerator, but it's not an accelerator in how we would maybe think about it in terms of taking equity and helping, get to a fundraise. It's more a go-to-market piece. And I think it's quite clear on messaging how we differentiate. Also, what kind of companies, maybe they might overlap here and there in terms of companies we target, but often it's different goals that those companies have. And it's mainly also internal coordination. If we get a company that's more fit for a different stakeholder in the organization, we would then help them to find that connection, essentially.
And for us, the new activity now, the Intel for Startups, is more broad spectrum ecosystem development, getting as many entrepreneurs from the ecosystem involved. And we know that in order to look at the future, we need to see many, many more signals. There are, of course, Intel Capital, usually at stages A, B, C. And there's a new group, Sagiv and Moshe at Intel, that's been building our internal incubation. They do also with external companies and build companies from the inside. So the variety of activities can still tell you that people are often get confused of who to touch and where and how. So maybe as...
I think, one other thing to bear in mind is that, many of those that we deal with, who have very bright and very capable teams that are able to mobilize around very specific issues are doing that. They are laser focused on challenges that the organizations faced. Now, and that from the perspective of those organizations dealing with them is laudable, but at the same time, the question for the company is, do you want to deal with 20 different companies to solve, the problem, or do you want to deal with one company that may not have such a surgical and precise solution to every single situation, but be able to offer a generally viable proposition? So I think that can also be, certainly when you're talking about expressions of frustration, can actually be a scenario that does evolve. Yeah.
Let me just one additional thing. So, a conversation we had this morning, and I won't name names. And someone at the table said the challenge with corporate venture funds is they usually inflate valuations. Why? Because if I'm sitting next to David that was here earlier, and I'm thinking of investments from BP, and there's a Shell person that listens in, we're going to have now a competition on valuation. They want to make sure I'm not, with this corp versus the others. I can tell you that I know of deals in the past that I looked at or was part of, and we had some corporate reasons why the valuation will be higher because we wanted to do all kinds of things in the market. How do you look at that?
Rich valuations, attributing it just to the corporates in this market is, come on, everyone's giving very rich valuations.
So you don't see CVCs inflating valuations?
I think the market has matured, so I think a lot of the CVCs are a lot more sophisticated than that. Yes, there are the tourist corporate CVCs who are there. When you're doing your diligence, ask them how long they've been around. Have they been through a cycle? Have they been around for 7 years? But I think the sophistication there has really grown. And just right now, frankly, rich valuations is...
Okay.
You can find them anywhere.
So thank you very much for the time. I think some of the people wanted to hear us saying, well, don't take money from corporates. Seems like I think we all believe that actually corporates are not that bad, and things have evolved, and the market has changed, and there are plenty of deals out there, and good luck to everyone with the future deals and innovation in the different corporations we're at, and thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you very much.